My computer has arrived. I'd like to call the meeting of the Law and Government Committee to order. Kath, can you do a real quick roll call, please?
Sauger.
Yes, here.
Wagner.
Here.
Hendricks. Campbell.
Here.
Kunkel.
Here.
Jordan.
Here.
Altoff.
Here. And as noted earlier, Eric will be here as soon as he can get out of the court. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented? Seeing Michael, seconded by Matt. Anybody have any comments, corrections, anything of that nature? Otherwise, vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Public comment. Was there any public comment? Looking in the audience, I don't think so. Sorry, Scott, so we'll move on. There is no new business for today's meeting. Legislative update, Alicia is not here today. Obviously, she's on her trip to Italy. But the report she wrote has been emailed to all of us, so if you want to take a peek at that, if you have any questions, please feel free to call. I will update you and tell you that I have reached out and talked to both of the sponsors on the solar legislation. Both of them are interested in assisting us. The comment both of them made is that there was a lot of discussion with the last trailer bill about from the solar farms, don't come back and nickel and dime us to death with continual trailer legislation. But Senator Cunningham has offered to put a meeting together with the Solar Farm Association Executive Director, himself and me, and we'll see where we can go. But obviously, again, the comment that they made was that they didn't intend to address counties like ours that have already approved 40 solar farms and are very supportive of that energy change. It was really to encourage others to not stop that. So there's some positive response. So we'll continue with that. Scott, you had a comment, please?
Yeah, just an update related to legislation, but more so on the Safety Act and the Pretrial Fairness Act. As we all know, the Supreme Court came down with a ruling and upheld the Safety Act and Pretrial Fairness. I just want to report to the committee that Chief Judge Camille will be convening a meeting with the court partners, State's Attorney, Public Defender, Sheriff's Office, Circuit Clerk, etc., on August 8th just to further determine how that is going to be implemented, because it has a September 18th implementation date. Earlier, or at the end of last year, when this was set to go into effect January 1, a lot of work was done to really figure out how that would be best implemented. So a lot of the work will be dusting off the previous plans, updating them. So I just want the committee to know that that is underway, and August 8th will probably have a good understanding as to how that will be implemented, and moving forward for September 18th.
And obviously that also relates to 7.5 on our routine consent agenda in relationship to that the state's attorney is asking for additional staff so that he can be up to speed by that. And if anybody has any questions, be happy to answer it at that time. In addition, I did want to point out that in your ISACO, I don't know if you guys actually look at it, but in your ISACO publication, the one piece of legislation I do want you to be cognizant of is the House Bill 2878, the public-private partnership. There was, again, a pulling back with regard to the authority of county governments with regard to retention for construction projects. So I just want you to be aware of that, so that as those kinds of projects come forward to us, we're going to recognize that we, again, have less and less control over some of those issues. Any questions, comments on legislative update? I skipped member comments. I apologize. Do any members have any comments for the committee? That's why I skipped it. Okay, moving on to routine consent agenda. Anybody want to remove anything, Kelly?
7.4 and 7.5, please.
Done. Anyone else?
7.1.
And then can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with 7.2 and 7.3? Ms. Wagner, seconded by Mr. Shorten. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Were there funds in there? Should I have taken a roll call? Yeah, you know what? I apologize. Let's do a roll call, please. I'm sorry, Kathy.
Kunkel.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Wagner.
Yes.
Sauger.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Altoff.
Yes. 7.1, Matt.
Brief question, don't know if anybody's here from the sheriff's department. What does the lease, the benefit, when you do the cost analysis of 39 units times that number, holy God, that's an expensive computer. What does the lease provide us versus purchase? Do they repair these? Are they updated? How does this work?
There is a warranty included in the cost of the equipment. So it's covered for the 60 months. But that's not because of the lease. Right?
Okay.
The lease is a budgeting thing.
And
That's why we're doing a lease.
the lease is better for us versus purchase. Why was that?
I don't think we have the money to purchase them. Carrie could answer that.
Yeah, typically with all of our IT equipment, we've had it on the lease to spread the cost out.
So it's just to spread the cost out over time, pay for it as we need it. Thank you.
And it is over 5 years, correct?
Correct. 5-year lease, dollar buyout.
Thank you.
So is that then a motion to approve
It is.
the resolution? Seconded by Mr. Sager. And a roll call, if you would, Kath.
Sager.
Yes.
Kunkel.
Yes.
Wagner.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Shorten.
Yes.
Altough.
Yes. 7.4 and 7.5, Kelly?
Yes. I don't see Seth here.
He actually kind of covered that a lot, if you'll remember, at the last committee meeting when he made his presentation. This is kind of a follow-up to what he was talking about.
I was
then.
just wondering what they were gonna do with the data and but that's all right.
Well, it's mandated. They share it with the state.
Okay.
That's my understanding. Dan?
Correct. This is a mandate from the state, from the AOIC, the Supreme Court. What are they going to do with it? I'm not sure. They want us to collect it. They want us to send it to them. This is something that's being pushed. So I'm hopeful that they'll at least provide us something back. There has been discussion about the development of what's being called a dashboard, where this information will populate quasi-live and will allow the local circuits to see these different elements and kind of be able to assess what we're doing locally.
Well, the effectiveness of some of the programs too, I would think, right?
True.
Yeah, kind of a metric. Does it work, does it not work, where should we change, where shouldn't we change?
And I would assume because we have the specialty courts that we would have more data than some of the other more useful data, I guess, that could help other counties?
Yes, we do. We have more data than other counties. Some counties, no.
That was it.
Some counties only have 27,000 people too.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry?
Some counties only have 27,000 people in the entire county too. So, I mean, it just depends on where you're located and what the population is and how much you're gonna invest.
That's it.
So that's a motion from Ms. Wagner, seconded by Ms. Campbell, to approve 7.4 resolution. Again, roll call, please.
Kunkel.
Yes.
Sager.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Wagner.
Yes.
Shorten.
Yes.
Altough.
Yes. And Kelly, 7.5, that's, I did see our state's attorney walk in. There was a question on to that resolution.
Yep. Yep, is he?
You want us to come up?
Yes,
That
please,
would be
would
great.
you?
Thank you.
Thank you. It helps for those who decide to tune in, call in,
And I
or
don't
drop
have to
in,
look
or
around
whatever
for
it is that they do.
So, these two positions here, were they included in the supplementals from last year?
No.
So these are an addition.
Yes.
All right. So I thought when we had our big discussion last year about the supplementals, there was, and I actually have what we passed here, there was 4 positions that we passed. How many of those have been filled? So we're,
All of them have been filled.
Okay.
So last year we requested 3 attorneys, and I believe we were provided with 1. And last year at this time, there was a lot of uncertainty with respect to sort of how this whole thing was going to look. So there was a number of things that were sort of coming down the pipe. One was whether or not there was going to be amendments to it during the during the one of like the subsequent later sessions, I forget what it's called, and then what was going to happen with the litigation. So both of those things have been resolved, and
Right.
I think how I had left it last year was like, well, this is what we're going to need in case this thing goes into effect immediately, but ultimately, in order to sort of meet the strictures and the demands that this act is going to have, particularly on the state's attorney's office. I mean, there's no other agency or office in this county that's more affected by the Safety Act than the state's attorney's office. It's fundamentally almost entirely up to our office to implement this thing and to comply with all the requirements, the new notification requirements, the new rights with respect to the defendant, the new obligations that we have with respect to filing petitions, especially bail court, the new hearings, and then we recently had a courthouse committee meeting where we're sort of talking about, okay, how is this exactly going to look? And it's going from sort of a fuzzy black and white now to full Technicolor. And one of the things that, and Mr. Wallace can maybe chime in here, but one of the things that it sounds like the court system is going to do is to be having these hearings on Sundays as well as holidays, and I just simply do not have the people for that. And I will say one more thing. This would bring the McHenry County State's Attorney's Office back to the number of employees that we had when I first took over back in 2016. So we cut a number of positions at that time that we considered to be superfluous in view of many of the new requirements that have been passed under the law and much of the criminal justice reform, which, as I talked about, the onus is really on the state's attorney's office. That's the reason for the request.
My understanding, this is pretty conservative too, is it not? I mean, you actually, as you look forward, depending upon how it is implemented and what happens in the future, you may actually need additional staff looking out.
It's possible. With regard to the attorneys, I mean, that's really where I think that's really where the need is, and sort of in coming up with this resolution, there's always sort of a push-pull, give and take, and we had initially requested 2 attorneys, and we pared that down to 1 at this time. The idea being, let's implement this, let's see how it goes, and then maybe we can reassess, and if there's further needs, we can bring it to the board and see if we can get approval.
Also, I will add that we have also tried to restructure and reorganize, which will hear in our budget presentation, our administrative staff to support. So we're really trying to be mindful of not trying to bring in too many people. So we believe we can support these attorneys without additional administration staff as well.
And we appreciate that. But
So-
again, I mean, it's an ongoing process, right? We're going to have to be evaluating it periodically depending upon what happens.
This is an attorney and a victim witness coordinator,
Yep.
correct? And was the victim witness coordinator, what would they specifically do?
So we have under the Safety Act, we have new notification requirements with respect to victims, and they're significant. So they would be helping us notify victims with respect to advising them at specific times that we have to. A lot of them are immediate notifications, especially when we're talking about what are we doing with this person right after they're arrested. They have to have the opportunity to speak in front of the court. They have to know certain things. We have to provide them with certain information with respect to what we're going to do. So that would be to assist with that. In addition, sort of over the last 3-4 years, the Illinois legislature has passed a lot of different sort of victims' rights legislation that also requires far more outreach to victims with respect to each and every stage and each and every proceeding than otherwise was required. And so this would just be an attempt to try to alleviate some of the pressure that our 2 victim witness coordinators are under right now.
Okay, so the new assistant state's attorney, the 12E, that would basically is to alleviate the weekend. That way you would be able to have more attorneys on the weekend, or are there additional duties that they would have to do also?
So yeah, so what we would want, where we would put that person, so right now we have a felony review unit / grand jury unit, and they're in charge of what's called rights court. So rights court is where monetary bail is set, and it's a single call in the morning, and then there's one on Saturdays. Now that's going to be expanded. So we have so not only is there going to be additional court dates, there's additional responsibilities that we have to do. So in order to, let's say, hold somebody pre-trial under the Rights Act, we have to file a petition. And the petition we have to file petitions each and every day with respect to everybody that's been arrested, who we want to keep in, And we have to, and now there's going to be 2 hearings each day. So there's going to be a first hearing, and then there's going to be a subsequent hearing where we're actually sort of arguing, what are we going to do with these people? What are the conditions of bond that we want? Do we want to keep them in? Do we want to let them out with conditions of bond? And so that's additional work that we're just not doing right now. And then there's also additional court dates, which are going to be on Sundays.
Okay. That's all, thank you.
Mr. Kunkel?
I'm in agreement with easing into this because obviously also until you guys get your feet wet with all of these new changes, I realize your professional opinion, have some idea what you think you will need. But to get into this too hard, too heavy, too fast, well, we don't know all the ramifications of it down the line. I like the fact that we'll only do it one at a time and then come back to us and looking for additional help if additional help is needed down the line.
Anyone else have any questions? Mr. Sager?
What's going to be the demand for judges then? Is this going to require a greater judge presence?
So that would be a question for the Illinois Supreme Court. They're the ones that ultimately make that decision. And perhaps Mr. Wallace could speak to that as well. But from what I understand, based on the conversations that we've had with the courthouse committee, is that we're going to need additional judges, especially if there's overflow with respect to each. Like I was talking about, each and every day there's going to be hearings with respect to what specifically are we going to be doing. A lot more information is required in those hearings, and they're a lot more involved. And if there's overflow, that's going to have to go to another judge as opposed to the single on-duty judge. So right now, court administration sort of has an on-duty judge that covers rights courts, that handles all the search warrants, that handles all the arrest warrants. Now they may have to expand who's actually quote-unquote on duty at any given time.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Kunkel?
Ultimately also though, right now, as a county, we are going to be paid more and more for less and less security of the service. This is really just a turnaround, obviously, to put in and right back out as quickly as possible. Super. Thank you.
There's more commentary than a question. Anyone else? Then motion by Ms. Wegner, seconded by Mr. Kunkel to pass 7.5 resolution. And I'm talking slowly so Kathy can't get it back. And then we'll do a roll call and we'll add Mr. Hendrickson to the, Hendricks to the roll, please.
Wagner,
Yes.
Sager,
Yes.
Hendricks,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Kunkel,
Yes.
Shorten,
Yes.
Altough.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
really
Thank you all.
appreciate the information. Moving on to the budget reviews, emergency management. And we do have, we met Ms. Lloyd last committee meeting. She's with us again today, so welcome again. Glad you're here. David, yeah, take the hot seat, please.
This.
Close, so you're close to the mic so that we can hear you.
Who brought donuts today?
Will it pass my budget? Then I did.
The guy from that Fox River Grove, kind of area stops at the donut place on his way in.
Oh,
On my
that
way
was
by, it
nice.
smells so good. I have.
So please, anyone who would like a donut, please help yourselves.
Thank you.
So,
Every
Mr.
year it's
Christensen.
different. Sometimes you have finance with you, sometimes you go it alone. I believe you all have the packet of our information, and I just wanted to touch on a couple things, and I know we're asked to be short, but I needed to make you aware of things, right? And
we asked for kind of a 3,000-foot
Right.
view as opposed to.
so this is part of what I talked about, I think in February. We finally got the presentation, or March, when we told you what EMA is, and those are the 5 phases of EMA and the breakout. But I wanted to show you that some of the equipment that we've purchased and we use. We use it more and more with our communities. They request it more and more. We've lit up the world because our light trailers seem to always be out. And whether it's helping facilities with the construction out by Valley High or what have you, or our communities having a festival or safety. So anyways, just a reminder of some of that. The command post is used extensively too. I wanted to show you this, and I've talked about the last couple of years, but I actually looked at the numbers. Since 2015, and I got here in 2012, I've raised, or asked to raise, and you've given me the money, 3.4% is how much more money in my 3,000s and 4,000s, which is, you know, the main line items that we use. That's where I'm at. The CPI has risen 23%. And I just want to make you aware that we have worked really hard to maintain that almost flat line, that over 10 budget cycles to only go up 3.4%. And that's not per year, that's not whatever, that's total. So I wanted to bring that up, and of course, with good news, there can be different news. I've been able to do that because we've been able to chase grants. The biggest one I get is what's called the fifth quarter on EMPG, the Emergency Management Performance Grant. The current leadership down in Springfield has chosen to negate the fifth quarter. And fifth quarter, what it went to was those agencies that maintained their accreditation, that crossed all the T's, dotted all the I's, we received the money that the agencies who could not maintain accreditation got. I've used that to remodel or rehab the Emergency Operations Center twice. The command vehicle that I showed you a picture of, the light trailers, enhancements to our equipment, basic operational costs. I've been able to use that fifth quarter. That exists no more. We've pleaded with them, and we, being myself, Metro County coordinators have pleaded with them. It was obviously, it became painfully aware that they didn't realize what we did with that money. It just didn't go into the wind. We were keeping our organizations going, whether it was Will County or DuPage or us. We used IESMA, the state association, to plead with them to rethink the process, and they hired 40 new employees at IEMA. That's how they're funding it, is through what they used to. So for every one of us who don't get our accreditation, they're taking that money to use it for IEMA ops. That being said, there's no more, I don't have in the future the fallback that I can use this. I used fifth quarter to buy batteries for our radios. You know that radios are only good for about 300 charges, right? So every year I would buy a third of the batteries, and just on a cycle. I don't have that fallback anymore, and I need to make you aware of that. You know, we've held the line on our flat-out budget for all these years. I don't feel that I can continue to do that. You know, this year's budget cycle, I'm asking, it still keeps us right at that 3.4% over the 10 years. So in the very short presentation, I just wanted to make you aware of what's happening. And these are the grant.
How much is that, David? How much money was that you were given?
It was anywhere from $20,000 to a banner year of $74,000 that we received in fifth quarter. It was a great year when Chicago didn't get its accreditation, because you can imagine the dollars that they got, right? And we all shared on it. And IEMA never disclosed who wasn't accredited, who we didn't. There's another thing that happens there. The small counties, there's a $15,000 base, and then there's population for our flat-out payment, which in IEMA speak, they pay now to change the deadlines on grants. It's over 5 quarters, it's $94,000. We still call it the fifth quarter, but anyways. The small counties with only 6 or 7 or 10,000 people weren't even spending the money. Now on EMPG funding, it can only fund half, right? So if my costs were $100,000, I could only get $50,000. Well, some of those counties were only, even if they're accredited, you know, they're only spending $1,000, $2,000, $3,000
Right, they have
on
no
EMA, right? So they don't hit the match. So that's part of where some of that money comes from.
And are you telling me that IEMA itself made that decision
Yes.
not to fund the program? It didn't come from the General Assembly. They got their line item, and IEMA decided that program no longer existed.
Correct. Right.
Okay,
Or
thank you,
that way of doing it, right?
I got it.
I have not gone a legislative route, right? You know, I know what it's like to get legislators involved in a policy decision within there. But I do know that it's more expensive to operate, and I have less money to do it, or I will have less money to do it. We haven't gotten it for the last 2 grant cycles. So.
Thank you.
Here's the challenges. The one I just talked about, increased cost. They've also upped our accreditation requirements, what we need to do, the training we need to do, the certifications we need to do. So more work on that side of it. It's all good, right? It all makes us better in our job. We just have less money to do more work. And the other focus that, I've talked with Scott, I've talked with Pete about, we want to increase our public outreach. When we did the hazard mitigation survey, we had over 500 residents respond to that, and thanks to all of you for the push you did. I asked you to get them in there. And one of the things, people are looking for that information. Oddly, in those surveys, when asked how they wanted to get that preparedness information for themselves, they said text or email. The last thing I want is another email. So I was really shocked that that was the methodology that they chose. I'm imagining once we ignored emails going out. But anyways, I want to address that need. And we identified in the hazard mitigation planning, and it makes sense. And it's time for us to reach beyond. We work great with public safety and villages and townships, and now it's time to move to our residents and work with them. And they showed that in those surveys. They want that. And then the last one, probably most important, is increase our resiliency to disaster. It is now one of your strategic goals. We appreciate that. And knowing that in a disaster, it's very unlikely that we'll get a disaster declaration. That means no state equipment. That means no federal dollars, right? There was just a move. You saw the tornadoes that ran through central Illinois. IPW Man couldn't activate because they didn't have the money to go down there. The state didn't declare, so the state couldn't release its resources to help those people. So each of us, whether it's a county or a city, have to be more resilient to disaster to be able to handle it, because we are on our own, or we can be on our own. In the big one, it'll be there, but
Is there a criteria, or is that just a subjective determination?
SBA loans, right, not grants, SBA loans are 25 uninhabitable structures, right? That's the lowest level of disaster we could get.
Sorry, does that mean businesses, or does that mean houses?
So that's the
and
weird thing,
everything?
it could be houses,
Okay.
right? So 25
Good
uninhabitable
question.
homes, but you get SBA grant. I realize it's a Small Business Administration, but they are funding residents. But they're not paying for it, it's not a grant. It's a very low interest loan or no interest loan. And you have to qualify for it too. So if you're already hurting, very few people take up on that, right? Then there's individual assistance, which goes to residents that have lost their house, right? That is based on uninsured loss. There's not supposed to be a quota, but we always hear the quota, that there's not supposed to be. That uninsured loss has to be pretty high. In a county like McHenry or Kane or DuPage, and most people are insured, you just don't hit the threshold for the disaster. Where we sometimes, and this is a weird way to say it, where we sometimes luck out is along the river. Many of the residents cannot afford flood insurance, so they don't pay for flood insurance, so they are uninsured for a flood. The problem with our river floods is they don't tend to be rooftop floods. They tend to be your crawl space, your what have you. And it has to, the criteria that you're affected by a flood, according to FEMA, is a living space, so where somebody is actually sleeping at night. And so those are the criteria. For public assistance, so for us as government, if we have to have in McHenry County $1.3 million in losses or expenses. So if we're paying overtime to DOT, if we've lost a bridge or what have you, but it has to add up to 1.3 million. Plus, the state has to hit 18-point-something million dollars. So you have to meet those two criteria in order to get a disaster declaration. And those numbers are based on per capita. And if we didn't have Chicago, wow, the numbers would be a lot lower, right? But we do have Chicago, and it is part of our state, right? So it makes it more difficult because of the large population. And you can't have a disaster without figuring them in. There are times in extraordinary circumstances that they will declare a federal disaster, and that is great loss of life with minimal property damage, right? And there's some other criteria for an extraordinary disaster. Very unusual to get, difficult to get. It's more likely to get in a community or a county with a, I think it's high SVI, so their social vulnerability index is very high, right? A lot of lower income or uninsured, a lot of categories come together, plus loss of life. So that's our challenges for the budget, is how do we make this county more resilient? And it's not just EMA, it's all our departments working together and all of our communities working together to increase the resiliency. The hazard mitigation plan was a huge part of that. It is now with the state. We're waiting anxiously for them to pass it on to the federal government for approval, and we'll be going on. Lastly, I've showed this slide several times to you, the external partners, all the people that we work with. It's not all of them, it's many of the people that we work with to get the job done. And I've added one, I got most of them, I think. This is our focus for next year, is those communities that make up McHenry County. The recent tornado in Huntley, it was a great example of that partnership, and Huntley's pretty self-sufficient, but to go down there and to work with them just a bit. I don't know why they keep being a target of each tornado that runs through this county or high wind event, but if you live on the outskirts, it's a heck of a show, but if you live there, it's been challenging lately to be in Huntley or Lake in the Hills. So that was Dave's brief, hopefully brief enough, but to give you an idea of where we're at and what we're looking at doing next year.
Appreciate it. Actually, I thought it was great. Anybody have any questions? Ms. Wagner?
On the general fund, the intergovernmental revenue is cut almost in half. Just wondering what's the reason for that? The expected revenues to be. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's year to date. Never mind.
Yeah, my heart's
Body language wasn't
Those dollars, that is the EMPT, the emergency management.
All right,
grant. Yep.
that's what I was wondering. But so we've received half so far.
Correct.
Okay.
Anybody else? Thank you very
All right.
much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up, public defenders.
Motion to move it forward?
Oh, I apologize, I didn't know we needed to do that. Can I have a motion to move the emergency management? Ms. Wagner, seconded by Mr. Hendricks.
Thank you.
Can we have a roll call? It's what we used to do in Springfield, we just call it. Can I have a roll call?
Wagner,
Yes.
Sauger,
Yes.
Hendricks,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Kunkel,
Yes.
Gordon,
Yes.
Altough.
Yes. See, you're in attendance.
Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Hi there. Good morning. Thanks for your continued support from year to year. The budget, and you've got my goals and highlights. They should have
Yes,
been
we
in
did.
the packet. I don't know if you have any questions on that. And then the numbers have remained basically unchanged for the most part for the last number of years. And we're full of anxiety, waiting to see how the Safety Act will affect us. But until then, that's the extent of my presentation.
Can I ask, do you have any feel on how it is going to affect you? Is there any anticipation,
We can't tell it all until it's actually happening, because we have to wait and see how the courts will handle it. So we look to the judges. But they need us there now, especially more than ever, because of the way the Safety Act's laid out. You were nice enough to give me a person last year who has been at work, and hopefully that's all we'll need. It depends on how it plays out.
But there could be a possibility of additional staff.
There could be, like you saw with Patrick here this morning. I'm not even sure. It's, he's got the burden, so it's
You're
even
right.
tougher on
It
him.
falls
So
clearly
it's a
on his
matter
shoulders.
of us. It's almost like you have to wait till it's in motion. And as Judge Camille has said, there's a lot of moving parts. From that, we don't deal, of course, with the street arrest, but we'll be there when the person's brought in. If Saturdays, Sundays, or holidays come into effect, that'll be a coverage problem, because our office is much smaller, than the state's attorney's office. But you know what? I'll see you. I'll come back and see what you've got to say.
Awesome presentation.
No slides this time.
That's
So-
okay. Again, any questions, any clarifications, Ms. Wagner?
So I guess I wasn't even thinking when I was thinking about the specialty courts, how much involvement you guys have. So it looks like you do the the high percentage of
Except for
represented.
DUIs, for some
Yeah,
reason.
And why would, yeah.
I don't know, but I've noticed that it's a real small percentage.
Yeah.
But we're proud of the specialty courts, because, that's our thing. I have 2 attorneys in there that handle that, and they both do a wonderful job. Of course, they might be working on Sundays soon, but don't tell them that.
We didn't make them work on Sunday.
No, no.
Anything else? Oh, I'm liking this. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you guys again, thanks so
You
much.
hardly warmed the seat.
There we go.
And do I have a motion to, again, move the presentation forward to a full board? Mr. Sager, seconded by Ms. Campbell. Roll call, please. You only had to teach me once, Campbell.
Kunkel.
Yes.
Sager.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Wagner.
Yes.
Hendricks.
Yes.
Shorten.
Yes.
Altough.
Yes, thank you
Thank you,
very
guys.
much.
Thanks.
Sorry. And you're back.
I'm back.
Ah, you're-
Good morning, Randy Freeze. I don't know that I've
Good
met
morning.
everybody, so good morning.
Good morning. Randy is our first assistant state's attorney. So I shortened my presentation as well, but, let's see, can I move, is this okay?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, okay, I'm just gonna move over this way. But I did add into the slides, so I highlighted some notes. I'm gonna try to keep this mostly on fiscally where we've saved money and try to make some changes so that we could stay as fiscally as responsible as possible, and also the changes that we've had to accommodate, and just what we're trying to do going forward. So just.
And I'm going to ask too, Lisa, if at the end you can maybe talk a little bit about what you anticipate, if everything you've currently put into place to deal with the changes in the Safety Act, if you maybe could address some of the challenges you see and maybe
Yeah.
some of the other things that might come to pass, just so we're prepared when we talk about budget. That would be appreciated. Thanks, Ms. Freeze.
Yeah, and Randy will be able to address a bit of that too, as Patrick did. Sorry. I know, I'm like, where? All right, sorry. Okay. Okay, mandated by the state, again, I left that in just so that you know what we are responsible for. For the civil division this year, highlights, basically, we are just focusing on litigation, and again, the more litigation that goes through the civil department saves the taxpayers money versus going outside counsel. If there's anything in these highlights and any of the slides that I go through that you want more information on, just stop me and ask me a question. I will make this presentation available for everyone so that you can look in more detail. That way we'll keep this one shorter. As far as this criminal division, we started a Crimes Against Children Task Force, which is, we're very proud of that we were able to do this year. And we've got 2 investigators with 20+ years experience. And we actually started this at the beginning of June, and they've already had several cases. So, it's sad to say, but at least they're there to make sure nothing, and what this task force will focus on is where the police departments need more help, and so that children aren't slipping through the cracks here. So, we also are prosecuting cases, but also trying to, is in the third highlight there, 184 prosecutions resulted in Illinois Department of Corrections sentences, while 196 resulted in diversion court. So basically, we are trying to not just send everybody to prison. We're trying to do counseling and help and get somebody before maybe they've gone too far. There's no return. Victim witness coordinator, I just highlighted here, we did ask for another victim witness coordinator, which is due to the Safety Act. But we also were granted more money. That happened actually before the Safety Act. So we will be getting additional. We've had this grant for many, many years of $32,800 annually. It's gone up to $45,000. So that will help, and that goes to payroll for that victim witness coordinators. And this is one of, I think, we're very proud of this program, which started in 2010. Huge success. And this is for those people that, made that first mistake, and maybe if they don't go to jail and get the help they need. I sit on the panel with this. I can't tell you how many people have mental health issues or alcohol, drug abuse, where we're getting them counseling, we're getting them help. And you can see that it's working. The recidivism is 7%, which is huge. And that is from 2010.
Do they get a priority access to that assistance, that counseling, if it's actually coming from the program?
They don't get any special access. It's just that through this program and through a lot of the people that have sat on our panel and people who come through our office, we have had huge success in finding programs that are free, and that people who don't have insurance or people who have certain type of assurances that don't cover some things. We've found programs that we can give them the information and give them the contact person to call, which is helpful. A lot of these people just have no clue they even have that.
And are they local, those programs that you found? They're
almost
within...
everything is McHenry County. There was one year we found a program, and it was somebody who was mentally challenged, and the program actually was in Lake County, but they serviced McHenry County, which we had no idea, and actually somebody had let us know that. And so we got that person help, and it was a huge help for them.
So kind of to take off what she said, if there's a waiting list on that program already, then does the person, are they able to jump to the front of the line? No, they just have to wait?
No, but usually we can get them in. There's more than one option a lot of times. And with the they have to, so through this program, their attorney would contact our office. They fill out a questionnaire. Our attorneys review it to see if they're eligible, because it can't be a severe crime. And then if they are eligible, they have to go through interview, and then they go in front of a panel, and that's the panel that determines what kind of, what they have to do in the next 6 months to a year. It's 6 months for misdemeanor, a year for a felony. They can be drug tested. They have to do community service. They have to, if there is a victim and there's restitution, they would have to pay that. All that has to be done within that 6 months or a year. And then they go to court at that time. If everything is, all their I's have been dotted and T's crossed, then that goes off their record, and they, we've had some that were just, a lot of times it's young people who's made a stupid mistake, and versus sending them to jail, it just is really, it's a very feel-good feeling, and people who have other issues that really cause them to to commit a crime. And it's not addressing it, putting them in jail, it's addressing it, getting them help. So we're really proud of this program. And on that note, we started 2 years ago the Domestic Abuse Deferred Prosecution Program, which is for the very beginning, where it's not so violent. And Randy, what are the requirements there?
So we do try to take low-level risk offenders, so people who are causing serious injury. There's not threats of death, not a lot of prior documented interaction with the police. We get the victim's consent. We meet with the victim. We get them on board with this idea. We work with Turning Point as well. They sit on our board, and we work with them, try and figure out kind of the root cause. Sometimes it's alcohol. Sometimes we have had offenders who have actually really been the victim in the domestic violence situation. So it might have been the last time where they've been abused for many years, but then finally this time they reacted, they wound up getting arrested. So we're really working hard with Turning Point to identify those cases, come up with recommendations for these people, counseling, drug testing, all those kind of things. And then get them through the program. And what I think Lisa was going to highlight is that since the beginning of the program in April of 2021, we've had nobody rearrested for domestic violence that's completed our program, which is just unbelievable. Because I worked as the domestic violence prosecutor for a long time in our office, and the same names are always coming through. So what it tells us is that we're picking the right people and that what we're doing is helping them. So we can only hope and pray that we'll get another year with results like that.
Yeah, when they sent me the update, I said, are you sure this is correct? Because that is just amazing. But we're very proud of this program, and it is full. I mean, it is. There's a lot of people going through it. It's been very demanding on our staff just to continue. And I have to say, all the volunteers, all the panel members for the panel for the deferred prosecution program and for this program are all volunteers, which we really appreciate from the community. The panel members on the domestic abuse panel are actually all professionals too. So it's wonderful that the people in the community are volunteering for this. Way Out program, this is another one. Patrick started this. This was his first big agenda item. He wanted to get help for those who are struggling with abuse, drug and alcohol abuse. And the program did so well in the first couple years that we could not contain it in our office, so we still support it, but we gave it to New Directions. And since they took the program in September of 2020, we had one person we call a navigator who navigates people through the system and gets them the help they need. They give up any drugs, what they agree to go into the program, and whether they have insurance or not, they get them the help they need, and they get them into recovery. This place is full, they'll find another place. Since they took over in September, which we had one navigator, they now have a team of 6, 2 bilingual, serving over 100 participants, with average of 50 new inquiries a month. It's been wonderful to see their reports. They give us a report every month. I'm going to show you later how we support them still. But in their report every month, they show us some statistics, and it's just very interesting to see what's happening. This is in McHenry County, and what's coming in as far as the people that they're helping and where they're getting assistance. So, like I said, these are all in your will be in this packet. So I just wanted to give you a little financial information on how we've also been trying to maintain our budget and keep it slim. Is we have asset forfeiture funds that when somebody is arrested in a drug case, or we have some other funds that I'll talk about next, but this is the drug asset forfeiture funds. If something is confiscated, whether it's money or a car or home, whatever, the state's attorney's office gets, if it's in McHenry County, gets 12.5% of that money. It can only be spent, it's very limited on what we can spend it on. We can't just buy a new chair for the office or whatever. We have to be very mindful. It can only be spent on a case that involves drug prosecution or rehabilitation. So as you look at the chart, you can see it's gone up and down. We can't have too much money in there in 1 year, or we will have to pay it. We have to give it back, actually, to the state. So you can see that it fluctuates. We've got it in, and we try to get it right out. In this last year, I just added that note there. that we spent $20,000 on the navigator. So we give new directions money towards the navigator. When we handed it off to them, we continue to give them monthly allotment for the phone and for the, towards that person. And then we also certified a drug and alcohol counselor this year in McHenry County with those funds. And the money laundering, we don't get too many money laundering cases, but when we do, they've come in and they've been pretty big, which has been wonderful. One of the things last year, when we asked you for the 4 FTEs, we told you that we were going to try to pay for all, other than payroll, we would try to pay for all their needs. And we paid for computer equipment. There were 2 investigators we had to do the bulletproof vests and gun safes and things. There's a lot of things with an investigator that you don't need with an in-house FTE. We also reorganized and found, like almost for every department with more software programs, we really had the need for an in-house IT help. And so we brought that in. That wasn't one of the FTEs. We just reorganized our administrative staff, and then we bought the equipment that person needs as well. So that was $24,000 plus. $20,000 we split with McHenry PD and purchased the Celebrate software, which is $40,000, and that's for all the phone dumps, which is just become massive. It's like almost every crime has a phone dump. So that we share that with McHenry County, and that allows us to get that information. And then almost $36,000. We had some big high-profile cases in the last year, and we had to bring in expert witnesses. That our line item for expert witness on our budget is $22,000. So we would have never been able to pay that. So we're able to use that on any criminal cases, and we've used that fund there. So as far as goals, we're trying to, the civil team is again trying to minimize litigation and do that in-house to save the county money. They're working on the new salt dome site, and they want to build a stronger bond with all of you and the department heads in the county. Criminal division, we're going to expand the crimes against children to encompass all the police forces in McHenry County. We are hoping that's our goal there. And then obviously just continue on. I did this before the Safety Act, that we'll try to do the best we can to maintain and do what we can with the staff we have there. This just, Patrick had mentioned that when he came in, he deleted FTEs, and we've been able to work with that until last year. And actually, I put a little note over there. In the FY 2015, before Patrick and our administration came on board, it was actually 62.6 FTEs, and right now we're at 61. So with the added people, we'll be about right where we were in 2015. So, and again, only because of the law changes. This is an org chart of our FTEs, and then you can see where those FTEs are. Again, this is before, without the 2 added people that we had on the resolution today. That's a org chart with everybody included. And then my last 3 slides are budget reductions. This is since we came in FY16. We've saved by conducting our own CLEs. We've saved in our asset forfeiture funds over $250,000 that would have came out of our general fund. Over $100,000 by bringing our own grand jury court reporter in. Over $2 million in litigation and labor law. And then we have a grant that pays for our drug attorneys, and a grant that pays for victim witness coordinators, and that's saved us in payroll And then the money we saved prior to all those years up till now in payroll without having the extra FTEs in. And I know Dave mentioned contractual services and commodities, but I just wanted to highlight this because again, with all the costs that have gone up and then last year with the high, the cost of living and inflation, we are still lower than when we came into office, the budget that was allotted us when we came in. And the only reason it went up where the asterisks are is because appellate prosecutor, which we are mandated by the state to pay every year, that went up $6,000, and we increased the contract for the court reporter, which we've saved over $100,000. She did another 3-year contract, and it went up just a little bit, and she didn't go up each year. She's just going up for the 1 year. And then we had to add a line item for our investigative team going forward. We didn't want them to have representation, what they need for that Crimes Against Children Task Force. So, and then just a note here with changes in the law, I added this after the Safety Act. With the 4 additional staff members that we added last year, and we also reorganized to add a trial technology analyst. We did this without adding any administration, so we've added FTEs, but we did not add any support. We were able to handle that in-house by reorganizing and reviewing what functions people were doing and make it more efficient. And then we utilized $24,000 in the forfeiture funds for the equipment that the new staff needed and the tech analyst. And then we bought a lot of the office furniture that was needed. We used with the asset forfeiture funds, and we had some funds left over from last year, so we were able to buy the extra desks and things which we didn't have. So we did not take that out of general fund. And that's it.
Any questions? Ms. White?
So, a couple. Can we go back to the slide with the FTEs? So we added 4 last year, and then these 2.
They're not on here because that literally, I had this all done. So and you didn't, I mean, we were coming up today to ask for them. I didn't want to put them on here, just assume.
Right, so this may say 63. Okay.
Yes, all right. Yes, so that they would be added in. Again, only because we don't think we could handle what's coming without adding these people, especially with, this will allow attorneys to rotate, the felony review attorneys that Patrick was talking about, will be able to rotate on those weekends and holidays, because they'll be working holidays as well.
And you guys will have a better idea, and I encouraged everybody to come back to us. In fact, Scott and Pete Austin and I had a conversation. After you have the meeting with Judge Camille, you'll have a better handle overall, and we've asked for an update next committee meeting, so everybody will have a better comfort level. And we really do appreciate the fact that you were conservative in how you're moving forward, but you'll be ready, so it won't be a catch-up game. So, it's appreciated, really appreciated, so.
I just have one
Yes.
more thing. And this might be picky,
That's okay.
but when I read through and it says that things were at no cost, to me, it's no outside cost.
No outside costs.
So I don't know if there's, because if somebody else reads this from outside, they'll say, oh, wow, it was free to the county. Well, it wasn't, it was really salaries. And so if there's just a different.
Yeah, I mean, those people are, those employees are hired, I mean, they're hired to do a job.
Right.
But before Patrick came in, we had outside people doing that job. So those civil attorneys were still employed. So I guess that's why I'm saying it no, I guess I should have put in no additional cost, because we didn't add them in to cover that. They had already been there. We actually cut FTEs and still handled all that without any outside counsel, which it was all going, almost all of that was going to outside counsel. So, but I can change that.
And I appreciate
Yeah.
that, and thank you for the explanation. It's just, I'm thinking of somebody who has never seen this before, no cost. you know.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
No, legal, outside legal
Right,
fees.
right.
Mr. Slager?
Yeah, I have a incredible amount of appreciation and respect for you all. I think you've done a yeoman's job here in terms of three different things. The first is that you've taken a look at the structure for staffing to make sure that you can accommodate all the increasing demands. I mean, the fact is that we know that demands are not going to start to decrease all of a sudden next year. You know, the legislature is just going to cut out a whole bunch of things, so all of a sudden you're just free to do whatever you want to do, type of thing. So I think you've just done a great job of reviewing efficiencies and making things work. So kudos for that. Second thing is that all of these specialty programs that you all have initiated and accomplished have just had remarkable success. And so I want to commend you and thank you for that foresight on one hand, but also the oversight to make sure that it is working and that it's a beneficial, positive program for our community. And frankly, for those individuals who just make mistakes at times. And so I really am grateful for that. The third thing that I want to say is that you've done a great job of holding the line in terms of the budget and expenses by making sure that you're doing as much as you possibly can internally versus going outside to get additional legal assistance from the outside. So it truly is a great success story for the administration. I commend you for that dramatically. Now the big question. You know, we can only tighten our budgets so much, you know, and the fact of the matter is that, again, demands are not going to diminish, they're going to increase. And I'm a little bit concerned about when it's going to be that you're going to come forward and say, okay, we do need more staff. We have to have more support staff. It's great to say that we're adding this 1.6 or whatever it is additional people, but at some point, there's going to have to be new staff to support this. So when do you anticipate that?
It's hard to say. We do have to see how this is going to roll out. So I think Patrick talked a little bit about the detention hearings, and that's why we have that immediate need, because that's a total restructure. The other thing that we're very concerned about that Patrick didn't highlight on is all the people that we are going to detain now are entitled to a trial within 90 days. And the people that we are detaining are going to be our most serious offenders, the people that the community should be very concerned about. And so we have to be able to try them, often complicated cases, think of murder. 90 days is not a lot of time. Now that can change if the defense is asking for a continuance. And if the defense isn't ready to try the case in 90 days, well then it can go beyond that. And that's why sometimes our cases now take about 2 years on a murder. But if these defense attorneys start really pushing the cases and want those trials within 90 days, that is somewhere where I see that we are going to need more staff, and that is just the reality. It takes more than one person to put a trial on of that magnitude. And I can tell you now, anytime we have a huge case coming up, check the courthouse all weekend. There are people here working all the time. We're already doing that. So if we're going to have 5 murder cases go a year, not that we have 5 murders a year, but if we're going to have a murder, we're going to have a rape, we're going to have an armed robbery, these serious offenses, we are going to need more people if they're going to go within 90 days. So that would be one area, but that really is going to depend on the defense bar. That's something that's entirely out of our control. The other place where I foresee needing more staff is, as you know, under the Safety Act, body cams are now a thing, and there's a certain rollout date for all of the departments. So all of our departments don't have them yet, but they are getting them. And our attorneys, not only do they need to review that body cam to see if there's evidence that's going to help our prosecution, but we're under a legal duty to also review all of that body camera evidence to determine if there's any exculpatory evidence on there. So imagine a typical, let's just say a low-level retail theft where an officer comes with a body cam on. That's an hour worth of footage that somebody's got to review. Take a domestic battery. That's 2 hours of one officer. And how about the backup officer who was talking to the victim or the neighbor? So that's just a lot of time. So that's where I see our needs expanding. We already have started adjusting to that currently within the office. As Lisa talked about, we created a new trial technology division. George, he helps us do all of that right now. We also have to realize that those body cams also have great evidence most of the time, 95% of the time. We have to find a way to put that before a jury. We have to redact things off of those videos. We have to make that presentable. So that's where I see our needs increasing, but we are doing a really good job right now of handling that, and unless, as I indicated, cases start pushing that 90-day trial deadline, I think we can hold tight for now.
So do you believe that, I mean, you're doing a great job right now, you're applying for it, you're trying to do the very best you can to kind of quote unquote hold the line and yet be efficient and get the job done within the framework of the legal requirements. Do you believe that all of a sudden with this change, this is going to be something that you're going to have to come back with a supplemental this year for a request for additional staff, or do you think that we're going to be able to hold the line for the next fiscal year?
We sure hope that we don't want to have to come back. It's hard to get staff also, qualified staff. I think if you look at the state's attorney's offices across the state, they are all understaffed. We are right now in a great place, and I am really hoping that as a team, we can come forward and handle this change. I hope that the defense bar, will start evaluating the cases and determining, whether it's in their best interest to push a trial like that. So I think we're going to do our very best, and I really would hope that we don't see you until next year, and perhaps even next year not need more. That would be the goal.
Well, I want to just commend you all. I'm incredibly pleased with the competence which this shows for McHenry County, and you guys just do a yeoman's job, so thank you very much.
And I'm going to ask a favor, that as you move on and are coping with all of this, that you contact either Scott or Pete and come before us and let us know what's going on, even if it's all good, right? I mean, it's just so that we're not, now it's budget time and now you're coming before us and saying it's been a complete cluster or it's really worked well. So if we have an opportunity for you guys to stop in for a real quick 15-minute update, I think we'd all really appreciate that opportunity to hear from you. So make sure you take advantage of that. Yay? From everybody, I think. So thank you.
We start in September, so hopefully within a couple months after that, we can come before you and tell you that we're just doing a great job.
Right. Or, whatever it might be.
We'll give you an update.
We would appreciate that, sooner rather than later. Ms. Campbell, did you have anything? All right, motion to move this forward, Mr. Sager, seconded by Mr. Shorten. Roll call, please.
Hendricks,
Yes.
Wagner,
Yes?
Sager,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Kunkel,
Yes.
Shorten,
Yes.
Alzall.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. There are no presentations, there is no old business, there is no reports. We do not need executive session. I look at all of you, does anyone have anything for the good of the order? Otherwise, can I take a motion?
No, I do have one thing I
Oh,
wanna
yes,
ask.
Ms. Campbell.
Okay, so, I'm a little, I was here as not texting, I left my computer at home, so I've been trying to follow this on a little screen here. So one of the things I was wondering, because part of this was the presentations today were meant to be just kind of nuts and bolts, and not getting too in-depth and that sort of thing. So I'm wondering, I would think might be a great idea to have Dave come back and do a little bit more in-depth presentation. I think I don't know that we always completely understand everything that they do.
What do you want specifically?
I think it's just that it's just a smaller team, how prepared we are for certain things, what does that mean, what does that look like? I mean, just a little bit more information about the program itself. Not now, because I understand the whole point was to just be very focused on where the dollars were and where we need to go. I don't know.
Can it be done on an individual basis?
Sure, we could do that. That's fine.
We could, and I also was going to make a comment afterwards. I've got a big note here too, that we still are, in my estimation, haven't gotten a real good report on COVID evaluation, on what we did right, what we did wrong, and where we need to correct that. So maybe you and I can do something.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Yes, David?
If you didn't want to do that within the committee and you wanted to open that up to more board members, I'd be happy to host an informational session. And, at the operations center, so we're right there. Sometimes it's easier to show with what we do. I'd be happy to do it there if you didn't want to do it within the committee structure.
Why don't we'll I'll follow up with Scott and Pete afterwards, and we'll try and coordinate something, and then obviously, we don't want to violate the Open Meetings Act, so we'll have to post it.
Yeah.
Never forget. But we'll follow up with that offer, so thank you very much. I appreciate it. Anything else? Motion to adjourn by Mr. Kunkel, seconded by Mr. Shorten. All those in favor say aye.